In a quiet orchard in New York stands a tree that grows fruit it was never meant to produce. One trunk supports branches that carry peaches, plums, apricots, nectarines, and cherries, each ripening at different points across the same growing season. This isn't genetic engineering or a laboratory experiment. It's the result of a grafting process that joins multiple fruit varieties onto a single living structure. Over time, the tree begins to behave less like one plant and more like a collection of separate fruit trees sharing the same roots. Some branches bloom early in spring, others wait until weeks later. When stress hits, not every part responds the same way. And that raises a difficult question. How does a system built on uniform harvests deal with a tree that refuses to grow on one schedule? Well, here is the full story. You see, a typical fruit tree grows one variety. It follows one genetic plan from root to branch. When it blooms, every flower opens on the same timeline. When it fruits, everything ripens within the same short window. That makes management easier, though it also means the entire harvest responds to weather, pests, and disease in exactly the same way. A multi-grafted tree works differently from the start. Each branch attached to the trunk comes from a separate fruit variety, carrying its own genetic instructions. Each variety moves through the season at its own pace. Some are naturally more tolerant to drought, others handle cold snaps better. A few resist specific fungal infections that would normally spread quickly through a uniform orchard. All of these traits exist on the same tree at the same time. Instead of acting as a single organism with one seasonal schedule, the tree begins to behave like multiple fruit trees sharing one root system. Production becomes staggered, stress responses become varied, growth patterns no longer move in sync. And that changes how the entire tree survives from one season to the next. And it gets better. But before we continue, if you enjoy this kind of content, you will really help us out if you could like the video and hit that subscribe button. Thank you. Now moving on. In most fruit trees, the part you see above the soil is only half the story. The fruiting variety is grafted onto a root system known as the rootstock, and that rootstock quietly controls how the entire tree survives in its environment. It influences how deep the roots grow, how efficiently water is absorbed, how nutrients move through the trunk, and even how the tree responds to certain soil-borne diseases. Commercial orchards select rootstocks very carefully for this reason. Some are chosen to keep trees small for easier harvesting. Others are used because they tolerate heavy clay soils or resist specific pathogens that attack the roots. In apples, for example, rootstocks like M9 or MM106 are used to manage size and improve resistance to fire blight or woolly apple aphids. Stone fruit growers often match peach or plum rootstocks to local conditions so trees can handle drought or alkaline soil. Now imagine attaching heritage fruit varieties, which were originally adapted to very different climates, onto a single, regionally suitable rootstock. A variety that once struggled in dry ground may perform better when supported by roots that reach deeper moisture. Another that needed cooler soils can benefit from a root system that regulates water uptake more efficiently. You're no longer moving trees to match the land. You're matching the roots to help the trees survive where they stand. And survival alone isn't enough for fruit production to matter. Fruit production doesn't begin with ripening. It begins with pollination, and many fruit trees cannot do that job alone. A large number of stone fruits and apples rely on compatible varieties nearby to transfer pollen between blossoms. Without that exchange, flowers may open normally in spring, though very little fruit will develop afterward. That's why commercial orchards often plant specific pollinator rows. One variety is grown for market sales, while another is planted mainly to supply compatible pollen during bloom. Beekeepers are then brought in to move pollen between those trees within a narrow flowering window that may last only a few weeks. A multi-grafted tree approaches the same problem differently. Because each branch belongs to a separate fruit variety, several compatible bloom partners exist on the same trunk. Their flowering periods may overlap by days or weeks, creating multiple opportunities for pollen transfer without relying on orchard layout. Insects visiting one branch can easily move to another within the same canopy, increasing the chances of successful fertilization. Pollination becomes less dependent on timing across a field. It can happen within the structure of a single tree across the season. That same staggering effect doesn't stop at reproduction. Commercial orchards are usually planted with one primary variety across large sections of land. That uniformity helps with harvesting and storage, though it also means the entire crop develops on nearly the same biological schedule. When buds break in early spring, thousands of trees may begin flowering within the same short window. That timing can become a serious risk. If a late frost arrives during bloom, the exposed flowers can be damaged before they set fruit. Once that happens, the loss affects every tree that opened at the same time. The same pattern applies to heat stress during fruit set or pest outbreaks that target developing fruit in mid-season. Because the orchard responds together, the impact can spread across the entire harvest period. A multi-grafted tree spreads that risk differently. Branches from early blooming varieties may flower first, followed by mid-season types, while late-season fruit waits weeks before beginning. Each group moves through its own growth cycle at a different pace. If one period of poor weather damages blossoms on one branch, other varieties may not yet have reached that stage. Production becomes staggered across time. Instead of losing the entire season at once, the outcome depends on how each variety responds when its turn arrives. That timing difference changes more than just when fruit appears. Well, maintaining fruit diversity traditionally requires space. Different varieties are usually planted as separate trees, each needing its own planting distance to allow light, airflow, and root development. A mixed orchard with dozens of fruit types can spread across several rows, each connected to irrigation lines, protected by fencing, and managed for pests individually. That layout adds up quickly. Every additional variety means more canopy area to prune, more ground to water, and more soil that must be monitored for nutrient balance. In smaller growing spaces, especially urban gardens or community plots, it becomes difficult to maintain that level of diversity without reducing the number of trees altogether. A multi-grafted tree compresses that arrangement. Instead of spacing 40 trees across a field, multiple fruiting varieties share one trunk and one root zone. Water moves through a single system. Nutrients are drawn from the same soil footprint. Pruning focuses on one canopy rather than many scattered across the orchard. Diversity shifts from occupying more land to occupying more branches, and that kind of variation doesn't always align with how large-scale systems are designed to operate. Large-scale fruit production depends on timing more than anything else. Orchards are planned so that trees of the same variety move through bloom, fruit set, and ripening within a predictable window. That synchronization allows growers to schedule irrigation, pest control, thinning, and harvest, using the same equipment across thousands of trees. Harvest is especially tied to uniformity. Mechanical shakers used in some stone fruit and nut orchards rely on fruit detaching at nearly the same stage of ripeness. Storage facilities are calibrated for batches that behave consistently during refrigeration. Even shipping depends on fruit reaching maturity at a similar firmness so it can survive transport without bruising. A multi-grafted tree introduces variation at every step. Fruit from one branch may ripen weeks before another. Some varieties soften quickly, while others hold their texture longer. Shapes, skin thickness, and sugar levels can differ across the same canopy. That makes coordinated harvesting more complex and storage less predictable. Uniform trees move through the supply chain together. Diverse branches follow their own timelines, and that shared timing often comes with shared weaknesses. Many commercial fruit orchards are planted using clonal propagation. That means every tree of a given variety is genetically identical to the next. The advantage is consistency in size, color, and ripening time. The drawback is shared vulnerability. When a pathogen adapts to infect one tree, it often has no trouble spreading through the rest. History has shown how quickly this can happen. In apple orchards, diseases like fire blight can move from tree to tree through blossoms during warm, wet conditions. In stone fruits, fungal infections such as brown rot can spread rapidly across fruiting bodies during humid periods. Because the trees respond the same way, the infection can affect large portions of the orchard within a single season. A multi-grafted tree introduces genetic variation into that structure. Each branch belongs to a different variety, carrying its own resistance profile. Some may be more tolerant of specific fungal diseases. Others may resist certain insect pressures more effectively. If one branch becomes infected, neighboring branches are not necessarily affected in the same way. Damage may remain limited instead of spreading across the entire canopy, and that kind of resilience begins to change how the system itself is maintained. Most commercial fruit systems are built around replacement cycles. Trees are planted in uniform blocks, managed for consistent output, and eventually removed when production declines or newer varieties become more profitable. Inputs like fertilizer, irrigation schedules, and pest control are adjusted each season to maintain that level of performance across the orchard. A multi-grafted tree operates on a different timeline. Because multiple varieties share the same structure, fruit production is spread across several stages of the growing season. One branch may begin ripening in midsummer, while another continues into early autumn. The same root system supports each cycle without requiring separate planting areas or repeated soil preparation. Over time, the tree can continue producing as individual branches age at different rates. New grafts may be added to replace declining ones, allowing the overall structure to remain productive without replanting an entire orchard block. Maintenance shifts from removing trees to renewing branches within the same trunk. But here is the question of the day. Could the future of reliable food production come from growing more variety on less land? Share your thoughts in the comments section below, leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more amazing videos like this one.